All right, good morning, everybody. I will open today's Te Puna Kōrero meeting for the 12th of June 2025. To begin, I'll ask Councillor Hayward to lead us in karakia.
Kia ora everybody, toru whā. Whakatakata hau ki te uru, whakatakata hau ki te tonga, kia mā kina ki uta, kia mā tātara ki tai. E hi ake ana, te atakura, he tio, he hauhu, ti hei, mauri ora. Kia ora everybody.
Thanks very much, everyone. I'll move through to apologies. We have one apology from Taku Parai, and I'll note the leave of absence from Councillor Johnson. I will put the apologies. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Duncan. All those in favour? Aye. Opposed? That is carried. We've got no public forum today, so I'll move straight through to conflicts of interest. Are there any conflicts of interest? There do not appear to be any. Moving through to notification of extraordinary business, there are no items. Confirmation of minutes from our 5 June meeting 2025. I'll move the minutes. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Leggett. Are there any comments or amendments on the minutes? No, in that case, I'll put them. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? That is carried. That brings us through to item 7.1, the former Plunket building at Wairaka Park, Pukerua Bay. I will move the report to open it for discussion. Do I have a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Ford. So we are doing our submissions on this today. It's our hearings. So for the submitters that are here, please come to the table when I call your name. You'll have either 5 or 10 minutes to speak, depending on whether you're submitting on behalf of yourself or an organisation. This includes time for questions. You'll hear a bell when there is 1 minute left for you to be able to keep on going. So if you do have questions and you hear the bell, best to wrap up then in order to make sure there are time for questions. And I will remind councillors that you can ask questions for clarification, but we're not here for a debate today. So with that, I will move through to our first submitter, Moira Lawler. Moira, if you'd like to come forward. So Moira, I've got you down for 5 minutes. You'll hear a bell at 4 minutes. If you can just make sure that's turned on. Brilliant. Over to you. Take it away.
Morena koutou, I won't take a lot of time. I really just wanted to put in a plea for a little bit of planning around that site. We all know that that building is going to be very difficult to make usable. I suspect it's likely that it will end up being demolished. I know the community hub is very keen to see a focal point for whānau in Pukerua Bay, and there's a lot of potential in that site. I'm hoping you've all been to have a look. There's a very pretty little sheltered park behind that building. We don't have very many sheltered spaces in Pukerua Bay. It's a windy community. There's a beautiful new playground that council's already invested in. There's a library, which I know it's tiny, and I suspect you get fairly regular reports about whether it's time to chop it, but please don't. We love it. We have a fantastic new young librarian there. It's very well used by children in our community, and there's an opportunity to integrate all of that. If the building goes, people can see that little park from the playground. We would love to see the library enhanced, not massively, but just returning the toilets that actually are there. The plumbing is all there for toilets, but the door got locked when the toilet broke. So it would be very lovely to have that toilet reinstated, and some space outside because the library is tiny. It is much smaller than this room, and it would be fantastic to have something like an outdoor deck, an outdoor awning, so that kids can be inside and outside with their books. So I guess my very simple plea is, if the building's demolished, you have to reinstate the site. Please talk to community about what happens then, rather than just sort of putting a bulldozer through and putting some grass seed down, because we have heaps of ideas that are low cost with community input. Kia ora.
Thank you very much, Moira. Any questions, Councillor Hayward?
Kia ora, mata upoko. Kia ora, Moira. Thank you for coming in and speaking with such passion on the subject. You answered one of my 2 questions, so that solves that one. The one I do want to ask is, what would, in your mind, be ideal best practice in terms of engaging with the community? What insights would you have in terms of the way that council should be engaging with the community?
I think that's a really good idea. I mean, you know, Pukerua Bay, we are used to doing this stuff. So I think if you had somebody come out and talk to us about what's possible, what's practical, We can talk to council and councillors about what we can help with, because we have some very skilled and interested people in our community. And, you know, we don't need the Taj Mahal. We just want some functionality in that space that enables particularly families to use it well. So I think a little plan for the park would be great. It doesn't need to be overblown, but it would really help, and it would give us a clear sense of where we can be involved, because there are people willing to do that.
No more questions, thank you.
Cool. Are there any other questions from councillors? No? All right. Yes, Councillor Leggett.
Thanks, Moira, for coming in. You talk about other alternatives to use it, and there's another presenter who's going to give us some ideas for that. I assume you've talked, and is that one of the things that you think is potentially possible?
Yes, we have talked to each other, and I think there's a range of possibilities for that park, but I support the community hub in identifying that space, because it's flat, because it's central, because children are there anyway. It's right next to the kindy, it's around the corner from the school. It's a perfect site for sort of family-centred activities.
All right. That appears to be the end of all those questions. Thank you very much, Moira. Cheers. All right. Next, we have Kelly McLean. Kelly, if you'd like to come forward. Speaking on behalf of the Ahu Charitable Trust. You have 10 minutes speaking on behalf of an organisation. You'll hear a bell. Is the bell at 8 or 9? At 9 minutes. Cool. So, yeah, a bell when there's 1 minute left to go. Over to you.
Awesome. Thank you so much for inviting me to speak. I'm here with Jen Giller, who's also a trustee at Ahu Charitable Trust Ki Pukerua Bay. So my name is Kelly McLean. I'm chairperson of Ahu, and we also operate as Pukerua Bay Hub. So I'm going to sort of recap our submission really quickly and then move on to questions. I'm sure you guys have a few. So Pukerua Bay Hub was established in 2017 by a group of locals passionate about providing opportunities for the community to connect together in Pukerua Bay. We were granted charitable status in 2018, and in 2023, so just recently, we've updated our strategic plan with emphasis on supporting the arts, community resilience, and progressing a physical hub in Pukerua Bay, and that was ratified last year at our AGM. So Pukerua Bay Hub has a really strong record of activating existing spaces in the Bay for community events, workshops, and school sharing. So while we don't have a dedicated multi-purpose, all ages community hub space, we really see that as a huge opportunity for Pukerua Bay, and it's a really significant gap for community where we live. So last year, with the support from Nekau Foundation, we initiated the pop-up parlour, which was a 5-week project that activated St Mark's, which was available at the time. And we had over 1,000 people from Pukerua Bay and surrounding areas come and enjoy time together through a range of activities. These included activities in a smaller room, which included a coffee group, workshops, seminars, school sharing groups, MP drop-ins, meetings, co-working, art classes, and that was really well valued and utilised by the community. I just want to reiterate that St Mark's is really uncertain around the future of that space, and so we don't have access to a long-term future there. So that brings me to Wairaka Park. So it's not been available to Pukerua Bay Hub, but I just wanted to clarify that that size of a space would be useful for the community. We've identified a few ways it could be used, for instance, arts and crafts, a small meeting space, and one-on-one appointments, including health and wellbeing, and early childhood education and playgroup, and a community cafe or co-working space. So just reiterating that the Wairaka Park building is suitable for those uses. However, we do not have the funds to renovate the existing building. We would have been interested in exploring this idea with in-kind community support. However, we're not in the position to progress this further without securing additional funds. And we'd also need to update our business model to accommodate owning a building. We have small fixed-term costs. We operate on $2,500 a year per annum, so pretty good value for what we get done. And yeah, we just to take on a renovation project would be really large for us. Cool. We just, want to really acknowledge that Porirua City Council is also not in the position to fund the renovation due to the economic climate. But we also commend you for exploring options to retain community use through this consultation process. So on that basis, we do support the removal of the building. So option 1B is that clear way forward for the site to reach its full potential. So we support the community to have future use of that site, and we think that Pukerua Bay Hub is well positioned to help shape this. Our team include project managers, an architectural designer, and we can really help shape what that sort of outdoor-indoor pavilion might look like in the future if we're given that opportunity. We think that the site would be well suited to a fit-for-purpose building in consideration of nearby features, the redeveloped playground, for instance, the local library, the reserve field, and the trails that surround it. Wairaka Park is also across the road from the kindergarten, the RSA, and links to the school and shops, making an excellent heart of Pukerua Bay. With the Northern Growth Plan and the expectations of growth in the area, we think that Porirua City Council should include the Pukerua Bay Community Hub within its strategic priorities and work with local groups such as us to help this bring it to life with support from community funding. We have many useful skills in Pukerua Bay, including tradespeople and those willing to support working bees and maximise available funding, even if it's small. The site is locationally suited for a community facility. 1B will future-proof the site, so that's the lease option, for community activation and use the short to medium term, for use in the short to medium term through temporary usage such as like pop-up marquees and food trucks and stuff like that, but also supports long-term development of a community space that is well connected to surrounding amenities. As discussed, unfortunately, option 2 is unfeasible for us without immediate funding to support development of that site and more time to plan and fundraise. So I've provided an overview of what we set out to do as Pukerua Bay Hub. So you can refer to that in the meeting agenda. But taking into consideration of all of this, we think that the critical immediate actions include removal of the building, the fence, and the decking to ensure ongoing regular use of the outdoor public space. The land under the current building would be best to be left open and returned to grass, making it available for a range of activities with the possibility of future development. Kept in mind, we do not think that tar seal and car parking would provide a best use of this space. To realise the potential of the site as the heart of Pukerua Bay, public toilets using existing plumbing lines located near that playground would be a very significant benefit. We suggest that these are next to the playground in front of the car park area outside the current building footprint. The only other public toilets are about 500 metres away, over by the shops, which is actually really far for whānau to reach when they need it. And we also support adding a zebra crossing across Wairaka Road to link the kindy and the RSA to the park and the potential community space. Cool. So the public toilets and zebra crossing would encourage more use of the Wairaka Park and align with the outcomes for Porirua City Council's use of the space, which is to maintain the park for community use and enjoyment, encourage casual community use of the reserve through enabling community, education and recreational uses of the buildings, and by retaining easy access pathways, parking and amenity open space, and encourage active play for children through the play space facilities and kickabout grassy areas. We also note that the proposed district plan rules for open space zone limit what can be rebuilt on the property without resource consent. For example, the PDP rules call for a building of this size to be located at a further distance from the boundary, and there's other features such as flood inundation maps requiring specific measures for public facilities built in such designations. It would therefore benefit future development to maintain the precedence of existing of the existing building's site in proportions so as not to lose the potential amenity that the current building provides. It would be a great loss if, upon demolition of the existing building, that a new equivalent building was precluded from development. We've provided maps and dimension building plans to underline the footprint of this site. So, who would be interested in leasing the site following the removal of the building and working through a planning and feasibility process of a new building? It would take time and funds to work through this process, and in the interim, we envisage a temporary pop-up or activation could be of interest to the community, including outdoor events, markets, and food trucks. For instance, we could run Matariki and Christmas on the field at Wairaka Park. However, as mentioned previously, the availability of public toilets and safe walking access to the park is critical. To ensure the future of the site for community use, we would require a reasonable lease arrangement and request a grace period of 3 years, reduced lease agreement to plan and develop the next steps, but allow for temporary structures, for example, gazebos, containers to reside on the empty plot. We also advocate for a mural to be painted on the blank wall end of the existing library by a local artist.
Thanks, Kelly. We're almost at the end of time. I do have at least one question. Is there any last thing you want to?
No, that was it.
That was perfect. All right, thank you very much.
We had a long submission.
I'm going to start with Mayor Baker.
Be really quick. Sorry, Kelly. That was absolutely awesome. The whole council did do a bus trip, Moira, to the site. So yes, we've all been there. We know what it's like. It's a fantastic site. Quick question about the site you have been using, the old church. Is that now no longer no use for community?
They intend to sell the site this year.
Wonderful.
Cool. I'll just do one last check for if there are any other questions. Cool. Just one question from Councillor Hayward.
Okay. Thank you for the submission, by the way. I guess I'm just trying to ascertain to what extent is there unity of purpose within the Pukerua Bay community about the suggestions that you have? What I would want to know is that there's certainty about the kind of opportunities that are in that space, and that there's not alternate factions trying to repurpose that and creating more disharmony rather than what we're trying to create.
We worked through a local consultation process with the Residents Association, and also had people who are very heavily involved with successful fundraising activities, such as the Surf Club in Paikakariki, come and talk through the process of development. And the main thing was that we need time to work through that as a community and get grant funding, essentially, to support our mahi. So I think that we do have consensus within Pukerua Bay that site's really important.
Thank you, Kelly, and thank you, Jen.
Cool. All right, that brings us to the end of this item. Thank you very much. You can return to your seats. We appreciate your submission. Thank you. So just a reminder, all we're doing at the moment is receiving the submissions. That's the 2 oral submissions as well as the 5 written submissions as well. So with that in mind, I will put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Opposed? That is carried. We'll move through to item 7.2, our proposed freedom camping bylaw. This is our deliberations report. I'll move the report to open it for discussion. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Waddle, thank you very much. Do we have an introduction on this item? Cool, I will hand over to officers. Thank you.
Morena koutou. So I'll get straight into it. As you can see, we're recommending the status quo, which is a combination of the Reserves Act and the Local Government Act. So this means that all current sites will be retained as freedom camping sites, and there'll be no new freedom camping sites. Now, we're recommending this for a few reasons. The message that we've received both from the community and council is that you would like to retain control of where freedom camping can occur. The second reason is that the public opposed all of the proposed new sites under the bylaw. And lastly, we don't believe it's possible to draft a bylaw that has community support and is legally compliant. We still think this has been a worthwhile exercise. We've opened consultation off the back of complaints about freedom camping in the community. We've heard from the community, listened to their feedback, and subsequently we've recommended that the status quo is the way forward at this time. Just a note on Ngāti Toa, this is the least favoured option for Ngāti Toa. That's because it includes the current status quo includes 3 freedom camping sites that are significant to them. With that said, we have communicated our proposed recommendation to Ngāti Toa and said that there will be a chance to review freedom camping sites under the review of the Reserve Management Plan, which is due to take place next year. Lastly, we've been in touch with MB about the funding they've provided us to develop the bylaw. They've told us that we need to return the money that we haven't spent, but we do not need to return the money that we have spent. And with that, me and Kieran are happy to answer any of your questions.
All right, thank you very much. I'll open the floor to questions from councillors, starting with Mayor Baker.
Thank you. Sitting at status quo, I'm still not happy, as are some of the residents, about Brady's Bay having freedom camping, because there are people in there every night, but there is no public toilet. What is the possibility of a orderloo or something? Because someone can't keep going in there, and a local is picking it all up, the excrement. So we've got a problem in there. So I don't want to stop this, but we have to look at it ourselves and see what we can do.
Yeah, just through the chair. We can't comment on that, but it's definitely something we'll raise with Parks and Property and see if we can do something in the interim between now and a review of the Reserve Management Plan.
So just further to that as a quick clarification, and then I'll come to Councillor Hayward afterwards. So am I right in understanding that if we wanted to today decide on any sites that are currently freedom camping sites that would no longer be, the only way we could do that today would be to approve a bylaw as opposed to stay with the status quo? If we want to take out sites under the existing system, we'd have to do that through the review of the reserves plan next year. Is that right?
Through the chair, that would be the most appropriate way of doing it, just given we hadn't consulted on possibilities of, say, removing Brady's Bay. So, yeah, that would recommend we do it through that process.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Josh, I'm happy for it to be left as long as the Parks team look at. Thank you.
Okay, cool. That's been addressed then. In that case, I'll come to Councillor Hayward.
2 questions. Thank you, Matua Upoko. Thank you, officers, for bringing the report forward. Just foreshadowing that I will have some comments at the end of this, after all the questions, Mr. Chair. I wanted to follow up on the previous response regarding the possibility of future review within the Reserves Management Plan. It is also possible that we could have a review in that period of time around a rehashed bylaw for freedom camping as well, which would be also convenient for the public because it would be able to then finally cover all of those issues in one round of consultation with the public.
Through the chair, if I understand the question, it would be that it would be possible to still look at a bylaw in the future if that's what council wants to look at. That would probably still be appropriate through the Reserve Management Plan review, whether that is still the best way to manage freedom camping. But yes, this doesn't rule out ever looking at a bylaw again.
Likewise, it's not to limit the ability of officers to consider running jointly a new bylaw review to start from scratch again, with perhaps a better range of assumptions, which I'll come to in my next question, but also have that review with the Reserves Management Act review as well, so as to give the public a full range of discussion topics on this issue. There's nothing stopping that, right?
Through the chair, no, nothing.
Okay, next question. So how definitive are officers with regards to the point that was made in the presentation just now about being legally binding and still meeting the expectations of council and the community? We talked about in the workshop the potential of one piece of legislation, the enabling legislation for freedom camping, being like this leviathan that commands respect over, it would appear, every other piece of legislation, including the Health and Safety at Work Act. Surely, as a council, we are supposed to balance these types of laws to come to a solution that is prudent in accordance with the Local Government Act. So can you please tell me, why are you so clearly saying we can't get there from a legally binding perspective?
Through the chair, the Freedom Camping Act has been challenged quite a few times around the country, and courts have ruled that you need to be compliant with the Act itself. Weighing up the other acts doesn't come into it. You have to be compliant with the Act. That said, it's difficult to be completely certain of where the line is between being compliant and not compliant. And it's our belief that we don't think we can comfortably get to a place where we think we're compliant and we think the public would support it. But you can't say for sure where that line is until you do it and potentially get challenged.
Okay, no more questions.
Thank you, Councillor Hayward. I've got Councillor Wehappy.
Thanks. I don't have a question. I've only got comments. Is that okay? Okay. Well, it's kind of a question. Just going back to my last Kōrero around monitoring and regulating, I think particularly in regards to the significant sites that have been brought up by Ngāti Toa, those particular sites should be monitored and regulated very closely on a very regular basis. And I would kind of like some assurance that that will happen going forward if we vote on the status quo today.
Is there something you want to speak to, or no? Okay, cool. Yeah. Oh. Okay. Councillor Duncan.
Yeah, look, thanks for this. I'm delighted that we've decided to opt for that we are deciding to opt for the status quo. I think the alternative was opening a Pandora's box of things that we couldn't afford, to police it. It was just a leviathan of options that just weren't open really to councillors. I think it's great that the status quo has been done. It's more a comment than a question. Thanks very much for your efforts.
Thanks, Councillor Duncan. Councillor Waddle.
Settle down, would you? Thank you for bringing this back to us. I think, yeah, we've landed in a suitable position. I've just got a couple of quick questions around the funding that we've got to give back. If we were to, as Councillor Hayward has pointed out, run a reserves management plan review and a subsequent attempt at trying to flesh out a nice freedom camping bylaw, are we eligible to receive the money that we have not spent back? Or do we get a double dip and get the whole amount again?
Through the chair. No, so MB basically wanted a response by the end of this financial year of either we do it or we don't. So we would have to return it. I would say it's unlikely we would get it back again if we went down this path.
Okay. And you just further comment, I think, from Councillor Hayward's point, it sounds like the Local Government Act's pretty bloody weak if it can't supersede anything else that we have to deal with. So.
Councillor Leggett.
Following on from these leviathans, just to make a comment, I think we've landed in a very suitable position that, we've gone through a whole process here. We've identified a whole lot of sites which we think are, frankly, ridiculous, many of them. And, these sites are not in place for no reason. I mean, history has shown that these are good sites around the area. And even though Ngāti Toa have some concerns about those sites, I think that can be addressed into the future. And I think the recommendation we have before us is a good one and a logical one.
Mayor Baker.
Thank you. Yeah, I'll support status quo, but I still have a real issue about us with compliance around these in the evening and not having staff to go out. I'm still getting lots of complaints about that. I've got a building down at Ngāti Tawa wanting lights because of the freedom campers. So there is still an issue at this end with compliance that needs to be looked at.
Yeah. I think that the comment that I briefly add, yeah, I agree overall. I don't think this is a perfect solution. I think if the option's available to us, it's probably the least bad option. And given the feedback we heard from the public, I think this is the most appropriate pathway forward. I think it is good that we can revisit some of this through looking at our reserves plan next year as well. But for now, I do think this is the right decision. I'll come back to Councillor Hayward.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I wanted to just, having asked my questions before, I thought I'd give comment now. Thank you, by the way, for giving me your time earlier in the week to kind of discuss my concerns about the item that's on notice. It's helped me clarify how I'm going to vote today. So, first, I want to thank all of those who took the time to submit. As I mentioned during the open workshop a few weeks back, councils get accused of acting first and listening later. So I'd like to think that your feedback has shown that's not always the case. In fact, this is a moment where we prove we can pause, reflect, and respond. Secondly, I want to acknowledge the role of officers in this process. For me, I think we just need to see this, take the L right on the chin. This is not about any individual staff member at PCC. In fact, I think your reputations would have been more at risk if we had pushed on in spite of the clear feedback. I want to thank you for your work, and I want to be clear, this is about process for me. Look, we've covered a bit of this in the workshop and my questions today, the questions around how it happened, the lessons learned. I won't rehash them again. I do expect that we will all uphold the mana and integrity of this discussion and to accept from officers that this process was not ideal. So let's name it, the consequence of a flawed process and assumptions. This brings me to my third point. It's tempting to file this one away in the category of legendary missteps along such classics as the Leaning Tower of Pisa, the Coma Bridge collapse, Team New Zealand 2003, America's Cup defence, Piranhas, New Coke, Google Glass, Quibi, the Maginot Line, the Charge of the Light Brigade, or the Mars Climate Orbiter, you know, the one that separates the metric and imperial units. And if we want, we can wallow in the waste of time and resources it took to get here and realise we cannot trust the underlying assumptions of the consultation. That kind of futility reminds me of the line of Beckett. Ever tried, ever failed, no matter, try again, fail better. But from failure can come better things. NASA didn't stop after Apollo 1. They kept going and landed on the moon. They also went and had some of their greatest successes on Mars as well. Michael Jordan, the GOAT, said, I've missed more than 9,000 shots in my career. I've lost more than 300 games. 26 times I've been trusted to take the game-winning shot and missed. I've failed over and over and over and again in my life, and that is why I succeed. Or as the old expression goes, success is going from failure to failure without losing enthusiasm. Like the mayor and the deputy mayor, we still have a freedom camping issue in Porirua. That hasn't changed. We still need tools to deal with it, tools that are smarter, fairer, and more robust. My hope is that we'll take the time to reflect, to learn, and to do better next time because we owe that to our people, our community, and to the integrity of our decision-making. So I'll support the recommendations. Kia ora.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Last opportunity if anybody else has any questions or comments. Councillor Lega.
I guess the only comment I would make is this is a shining example, and we've gone round, of local authorities being foisted with responsibilities and no money to come with it. And, you know, this is why we're having the discussion about, enforcing the rules, etc. It is a difficult thing for us as a council to contemplate that because it's all costs and the benefits are sometimes difficult to see.
Councillor Duncan.
Yeah, I didn't quite catch what Councillor Hayward said. Could he go over that again?
And on that note, so noting that the recommendation here, obviously, noting the submissions that were presented, and we're agreeing to recommend that Council continues to manage the freedom camping under the Reserves Act and the Local Government Act. I will put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? That is carried. Thank you very much to our officers on that. All right, we're moving through to item 7.3, the vacant land and empty derelict building update. Councillors, you'll note, I think on the table in front of each of you, there is a recommendation. This is an update that I'll ask Graham to speak to in a second. But before we get to that, I'm just going to move this to get it on the table. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Leggett, thank you very much. I think I'll hand straight over to you, Graham, just to introduce this and the recommendation, which is also up on the screen as well.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, everyone. Just as a background, I've been trying to get hold of the owner of 6 and 10 Bedford Court for a while. On Monday, I managed to speak with him for about half an hour to 3/4 of an hour, and I sent him a copy of the paper, the original paper, which has come to this meeting, and that, I think, really got his attention. So what I stressed to him is that council is not happy with the state of the sites, and that he had to provide to me for this meeting a plan in terms of what he proposed to do about it. He sent through his property manager an email to me on Monday night, which is attached behind the recommendation here, in terms of how he proposes to work on the properties up there, 6 to 10 Bedford Court. I've talked with our community partnership team, and in terms of what we can do to assist in terms of some of the removal of the graffiti, and we will work with the owner in terms of trying to, in doing that. He says in his in that email to me, he's got to turn 6 into a car park. That's what he's stated in his email. So what I'm proposing is, and that's the way I've changed the recommendations, which you can see, is that we monitor in terms of the commitments they've given to the council per that email. We work in collaboration with the owner in terms of improving the sites. In terms of that collaboration, is the point 4 is removing the 10 Bedford Court out of the current derelict building category and putting it back into a business 13 category. And we work with, and then come back to you and report back to you in terms of progress, in terms of them meeting their commitments.
All right, thank you. And I'll come to questions in a second. Before I do that, though, Graham, could you just reflect on questions I was asking you just before the meeting around both the financial impact of this and also what options we have available if we were to agree to this recommendation today, and then in a few months the property became derelict and poorly managed again?
Well, under the Rating Act, in terms of the setting of rates, they're set for a year. So once it's set for the year, it remains that for the year. So the next opportunity to review would be in a year's time in terms of that. We will, part of this is actually working with the owner and stressing to them that they're on notice from council, and that this is an opportunity for them to honour their commitment. Otherwise, they'll go back up into the derelict building category. And that was the reason why we put this into place, was to incentivise owners to keep their properties in a good state of condition.
All right, thank you. I will come to questions. I have a comment as well. We'll do questions first. I've got Councillor Ford, and then I'll come to Mayor Baker.
I've got a real issue with the owner of 6 Bedford. How long has council been working with them to try and get some sort of movement in that area?
Well, over the last few months, in terms of where we've been communicating, because we've been trying to get hold of him and he wasn't responding, so we sent him a letter in May. I then followed that up because we'd gone past the due date, and that was in the original report. And then I spoke with him with the building consent manager. He got a bit confused in terms of, because the building consent team sent him a notice he had to rectify, I think it was the building works, in terms of people couldn't get in, and he got a bit confused between the two correspondents from council. So
I guess it's not necessarily an issue with the owner, it's with that space being left in that derelict kind of condition, because this is not a couple of months, this is actually years. that particular area has been, and I know the mayor has even gone around to try and sort things out, maybe even picked up some rubbish in that area, but it's an eyesore. It contributes to perceptions of neglect in that area, and it has been for some years. So I see what you've got here. I don't even know what the timeline is in terms of them trying to move it into a car park, but I'm likely not going to support what you've brought forward. That's all I'll say for now.
All right, okay, cool. Thank you, Councillor Ford. I've got Mayor Baker and then Councillor Wehapi.
Yeah, 2 questions. I'm agreeing with what Councillor Ford said. In my first term as mayor, I met him and his building person on site because it was such a mess. And yes, we did pick up rubbish at the time. Did it as a councillor as well. And he knew then, he met me, he knew he had to keep it clean. And every few months it gets worse and worse and worse. And then we let him get away with it and we go back to again. He's had plenty of time to actually clear it, flatten it, and just grass the damn thing. So I'm getting a bit annoyed with this because we chase him and then we give him, now we're asking to give him a bit more time. So I need to think on this. Tell me about Hearth and Place. Have we spoken to that person who owns that building? Because that's just getting more and more run down, and I've asked for the council sticker, which was sitting on the window, to be removed because people think it's a council building and it's not. I just wondered if you'd had conversation with that owner.
I haven't, but I know Simon Ellison did. And even though he put the glass in, we asked him to remove that, the covering behind it, but he hasn't done that.
Okay, thank you.
But I'll follow that up with our city partnership team.
Thank you.
All right, I've got Councillor Wehapi and then Councillor Philo.
Thank you. Just reading very briefly through this, Graham, I'm just reading a whole lot of excuses that come up every time something, a contentious subject for this particular happens. Can you just remind me before I make my final comment? In here he said due to the fire damage. Now to me, this was more than 10 years ago. Is this correct?
I'm not sure when it was burnt. Sorry.
Okay, all right. It was a long time ago anyway, so for him to keep using that excuse is just... for me, in any other community, this wouldn't be tolerated. This would not be tolerated in any other community, and I will not be supporting this. Thank you.
Councillor Philo.
Just a few questions around from some of the stuff you've got in the email, or his email. So he's asking for exactly what actions we would like to undertake to clean up the site. And then on the next point, he's saying we've cleaned up the site in response to PCC's compliance request. It's not clean. From what I saw at that area, it's just the lawns have been a bit of weed whacking done, but there's rubbish all over the place and there's still... it's dangerous. So did you go back and say what you specifically want the site, how you want the site to be cleaned? Was there any communication?
I have not responded to him in terms of that detail other than acknowledging his email and that I would bring that to this meeting.
Okay. So I'll come to you in a second, Councillor Hayward. I guess just the perspective that I bring on this, the question we have to decide here. Fortunately, once we set this rate, it's locked in for a year. There has been some response to the engagement that we've had from officers with him. And so the question is, do we reward that there has been some degree of improvement with no guarantee of more? Or do we proceed with that original recommendation and say that too little, too late, really is what we're tossing up at the moment. I'll come to you in a second, Councillor Hayward, but what I do want to note is that the sense I'm getting from the meeting right now is that there does not appear to be support for this recommendation. So what I'm likely to do with the leave of the meeting is to put the original recommendation when we get there, but I will give people the opportunity to speak to that. That's based on what I'm hearing so far. So I'll come to Councillor Hayward, and then if anyone wants to speak to that suggestion that I've just made, I will allow people to speak again at that point. Councillor Hayward.
Thank you, Matua Upoko, and I will use that as an opportunity to then go into your comment as well afterwards, so you save me having to speak twice.
Sounds good.
Questions. what has been the cost in terms of, as best as you can estimate, and having to follow up with the property owner, in leading to the creation of this motion and now the proposed change recommendation? How many hours, how much time has been spent on this?
Oh, not a large amount. I suppose there was on the Monday was the telephone call and then redoing the papers and things like that.
So to be
it's
clear,
been mainly my time.
so it's maybe hundreds, not thousands of dollars is what we're talking about here? Not to make you feel like you're having to give your hourly rate or anything? Okay. And in your conversation with the property owner earlier this week, did they give any rationale as to why they have been unable to be communicated with thus far?
No.
No offering of a mea culpa, no explanation on that front?
I don't know if he really understood in terms of what we were seeking in terms of the state of the thing. And he, I think, got a bit confused, as I mentioned before, was the two correspondence which you had received from council. And one was to do from the building team, was regarding the safety of the site. And then that was fixed, and he was corresponded, that was okay, and I think he was confused between those two correspondence.
And just
that's just recent.
Yeah, I'm just trying to figure out what that's recent correspondence.
Correct.
Obviously, this has been an issue that has involved, including which has been already disclosed at this meeting, face-to-face meetings with elected representatives, including the mayor. And I'm trying to understand this as somebody who may not know all the facts for more than 10 years. Am I understanding this? Is that can officers confirm that this has been an issue for that period of time?
Thank you. Through you, Chair. I have been dealing with the property owner there, Mr. Patel, for a number of years, both here and Wellington City Council. So I think the main points, I suppose, from a building compliance point of view, we've been dealing with it in terms of when the building burnt down and trying to protect that building from being entered. So that was sort of the first time I got involved a number of years ago. I'm not sure about the 10 years. But at that time, they secured the building. And so from a Building Act perspective, there was nothing further that I could go down because the threshold of a dangerous and or insanitary building is quite high. So they were quite responsive at that time and boarded up the building. But in terms of the Building Act and the area, I teamed up with the health team and we got it cleared up to a point that we were satisfied that it didn't breach the Health Act or the Building Act. Over time, it sort of periodically has crept on again where it was being dumped on and rubbish and litter and things like that. And I recently got involved again from a building compliance point of view, and they were quite responsive to quickly board up the building again. But the building owner is a degree of, where a bit of separation. He has someone that manages his properties for him. There was a couple of recent deaths in his whānau that he explained and that he never picked up on this email, and neither did his property manager. So I think, but since they've spoken to both myself and Graham, there has been a bit of a response. And it's about probably just ensuring that they maintain their commitment to clean up the site to a level, again, that satisfies this rating differential. Is that the right terminology, Graham? So, yeah, that's probably my feedback, just in terms of my input. Any questions?
Thank you for clarifying that in terms of broader context. If officers want to speak anything more to my question,
I think Jim's just got a comment and then I'll come back.
Thanks.
Yeah, through the chair. Look, one of the things I think just in terms of your deliberations on this one, just to put into perspective, what is the impact of this rating differential? Because it's on vacant land, we're talking about $1,000 uplift. So you're probably going to see the state of this site, even at a higher differential, staying the same in a year's time. So one of the things that sort of has been on the back of our mind is, well, how do you use this leverage at the moment to secure him, to ensure him he contracts potentially to our own graffiti and litter contractors to keep that site tidy throughout the year. And at the moment, in the conversations that Graham has had, is that I think we've got that point of leverage at the moment. But $1,000 is not going to keep that site tidy, but the potential to keep them out of the derelict zoning, and potentially for that derelict rating differential to increase in the future. I'm just putting it out there, like you could come up with a different arrangement here, that's all.
Thank you for that response. Which actually brings me, it's actually a very good point because it brings me to my feedback with regards to going back to the original recommendation. In the proposed amendments that's come up here is recommendation 5, which talks to what Jim has just been mentioning about looking at future increases to the differential to provide, to use the quote, to provide a further incentive. So nothing stops us from passing the original notice on recommendations on notice, noting in our own minds that we can do that as part of the new triennium as we go into the new rating year. There's nothing, it's a noting provision, and I think that we still have that ability whether we pass the proposed amendment or not. For me, I am trying to be very careful not to prejudice the individual owner's right to natural justice in these sorts of matters. But I do find that there is a deficit of trust, and that for many years it would appear several attempts are made, and now we are getting to a place where it has escalated to a motion around this table before action is taken by the said property owner. That is not acceptable. It is a waste of our money, it is a waste of ratepayers' money, hundreds, thousands, what have you, to have to go through this process. I'm thinking a great deal about that differential issue when we get to it for the next rating year, but I don't think that this recommendation serves as an effective means to reflect the issue we have with trust. So I would rather that we go back to the original on notice.
Thank you very much, Councillor Hayward, and noting as well that in the Chair's recommendation that I put up, that recommendation 5 does mirror the original recommendation 3. So we will see that go through if we do revert to that original recommendation. And just while I'm speaking, just noting we hadn't talked about that as well, that is something that I support. If we could, I would probably support doing more than just noting that right now, to be honest, but I realise there's a process that we do have to go through. I had Mayor Bacon next, and then I'll go Councillor Ford, Councillor Leggett.
Can I just ask the officers first before I make a comment, can he legally turn that into a car park, and is he going to actually asphalt it? Because that's going to cost a lot more than the cost to tidy it out.
Through you, Chair, I'd have to look into that from a district planning point of view. That's not my area of expertise, but arguably yes. But I'd have to check with the planning team. I'm sorry, Mayor Baker.
Okay, thank you. Because the cost to do that, his before and after photos, or the ones we've got in our papers, and then the one you've sent us, Graham, is disgraceful. All he's done is mowed the grass, left all the litter, everything there, nothing's changed. We've got childcare centres, medical centres, young families on the courts, and this is 10 years. And I have tried with this gentleman, and we are getting nowhere. I've even met with his building guy, who is young. You can't tell me he didn't need to have this on the list to mow it and tidy it every month or every 2 months. The community there have had enough. We're talking about a new building going in for our library, and we're looking at this mess. I'm not convinced even putting that rating on him will make him clean it up. I would take it higher. I'm really annoyed with this now, so sorry.
Give me a Baker, Councillor Ford.
You probably took the words out of my mouth. So I was just wanting to, Jim had you were talking about us and all the other carry on, but is the owner currently keeping it clean with the current on the current differential rate? And I think the answer is no, because we've seen it.
The answer is absolutely no.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I suspect that with
I
the
asked it,
differential,
but I
it would be
knew the
absolutely no. But with the threat of a higher differential, that could be a difference. But I think
Yeah.
there may be need for some other imposition
Yeah.
to get
So
this
I think,
cleaned up.
yeah, because for me, I think it's about creating that meaningful financial nudge to try and encourage Mr. Patel to, I thought it better, take responsibility for that visual, I don't know, ugliness, eyesore, and it'll help with the economic health of our city, especially in that particular area. And as you know, all the points that the mayor raised as well, we're putting a library in there. We don't want to look at that.
Councillor Leggett.
Just a question. I mean, I agree with the frustration of all of us over the years. It's been a litany of excuses. But the question I have is, I'm conscious of what you've said, Jim, and, I think, for us, a $1,000 uplift is not going to necessarily make any change to the cleanliness of the site. So are we able to either do the clean-up on a regular basis from council and bill him, which would leave us with, I just asked that question first, could we do that, like for graffiti and also for rubbish? I mean, you got to, we all have to appreciate it's not him that puts the rubbish there, is it? It's all the rest of us.
Through the chair, the answer to that question is yes, we could. And if he didn't pay his bill, then he could face a further uplift the following year.
Right. So that sounds like a potential way forward, suggested by the mayor, I might add, not me. But I did like your initial suggestion, Jim, that as you've already told us that you have been talking to him about, cleaning the site up and contracting Porirua City Council to do it. So it's either one way or the other. We do it and charge him, or he contracts us.
So it's
similar.
Through the chair, just to clarify, we haven't talked to him about us doing that. That is, we're literally still going through a procurement process to look at our suppliers for our current supplier for litter and graffiti management. They do a damn good job. And so we have that capability available to us. And if, yes, we could invoice their costs, which are really reasonable, to make sure this is not an eyesore. And we could invoice them for that. And you can have your cake and eat it too. You can put the higher rate on them, but with the threat of a further higher rate. Anyway, that's just a suggestion, because I could see that there's a lot of discomfort. I mean, this is, all the officers agree this is a terrible situation that the community are looking at, right? So.
Yeah.
All right, is that everything from
Yeah,
Councillor
that's...
Leggett? Okay, I've got a Councillor Waddle and then Councillor Wehapi.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I think quite simply, actions speak louder than words, and he has had ample time to get this right for his property and for the community, and it's disgraceful. If you can't maintain your property, then maybe it's time to no longer have it as your property. So, yeah, I will happily support the original recommendation as tabled from the papers when they were sent out last Friday.
All right, thank you. Councillor Wehapi.
Thank you, yeah. So now that we're in this, I'm happy to support the original in here. And it's not about the $1,000 for me, it's about the principle. All those local businesses that have been working hard in that community over the years have had to put up with this. And it's not good enough. And yeah, as Councillor Leggett said, it's excuse after excuse after excuse. Now, we all know that that property was originally built as a bar. And the community did not want it. So he should have looked at it back then and actioned something back then and moved on.
All right, thank you. Councillor Duncan.
Yeah, look, there's not a lot I can add to what's already been said. This joke has been toying with council for a long time and with the people in the local community there, and it needs to stop. So yeah, I'll be supporting the original motion.
Okay, thank you. Any final questions or comments? Councillor Philo.
I'll also be supporting the original motion. Just to Councillor Leggett's point, though, I think I don't know whether, increasing this will actually get the place cleaned up. So is there anything we need to do procedurally, or is that just more something that operations will do in terms of officers speaking to him about cleaning it up and charging him?
Through the chair, I think there's a discussion to be had here, and to actually identify exactly what those costs would be. And I think with the support of the council, that if you were at some later stage looking at a higher differential, it would be quite a good position, just to get something done. So it would require engagement.
We've got a comment from Ruben as
Yeah,
well.
just through the chair, the what was, you'd probably know them as Waitangi Action Group, came in a little while ago. They do that kind of work. We have a contract for them to do that. So there isn't necessarily a requirement for us to invoice them for that work. But there would require a conversation if we were going to go down that path, and we wouldn't be able to make an amendment on that today.
Okay, cool.
Just to clarify something through the chair, so Ruben's right, except that this is now a secured site with a perimeter fence on it, and so you need to have access to it, and so it's effectively private land that we're looking after. Yes, but I would still consider that the owner we should be recovering our costs against him, but we would have to come to an arrangement to access that site.
Okay, so what I'm hearing from that, I think, is that you've officers have clearly heard the feedback. We don't need to put a formal amendment around that today, but if that was to eventuate, you'll be able to bring that back, and we can do that then. But I thank you very much for clarifying that, Councillor Philo. So given that, I don't believe there are any other questions. So what I'd like to do, just to make sure we know exactly what we're voting on, could we put the original motion back up on the screen, just so we all know exactly what we're voting for? And while we're doing that, I will just talk back through it again. So what we will be doing, it's the original motion as was in the papers, receiving the report and agreeing to move the property at 6 Bedford Court into the vacant land, empty derelict building general rate differential group for 25-26 rating year, and it remain in that category until improvements are made and advice in writing to council, unless the property's condition is improved or plans for its improvement are provided to council prior to this meeting. And we've determined that too little too late on the improvements that have come. I won't go through recommendation 3 because that mirrors recommendation 5 that we've already spoken to. So I am under Standing Order 24.4 substituting this motion in. I do need the consent of the seconder of the original motion to do that, who was Councillor Leggett. So Councillor Leggett is happy to do that. So that motion has been substituted in. So I will put that original motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Opposed? That is carried. Thank you very much, everyone. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you very much, Graham. Okay. That brings us through to item 7.4. This is the minor amendment to designation PCC 26. I'll move the report to open it for discussion, seconded by Councillor Duncan. Thank you very much. I will begin by inviting officers to speak to this report.
Kia ora tātou. I've got Alex Kitson here, who's our newest policy planner, who will introduce this report for you.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I'll take the report in paper as read, but I can provide a quick overview. So Porirua City Council has a designation at 3 to 5 and 7 Commerce Crescent, Waitangarua Road Reserve, and that adjoins 3 to 5 Commerce Crescent, Waitangarua. So the council is the requiring authority for this designation, and the purpose of the designation is for roading operations and maintenance. The council has provided notice seeking a minor amendment to the boundary of the designation, And this alteration is for the road reserve parcels to be included into the designation, and all the private parcels associated with the commercial block to be removed. We've assessed the proposal and see there are no direct or adverse effects from the proposal, and the council owns the land directly affected and has sought written approvals from adjoining land owners and occupiers. We therefore request that you recommend that council confirm that the minor amendment to the boundary of the designation be confirmed.
Thank you very much, Alex. Are there any questions or comments on this paper? There do not appear to be. Brilliant. Well, that's all good then. Pretty uncontroversial. In that case, I'll put them up. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? That is carried. Thank you very much. Just before we move into public excluded, which we're about to do, I just want to acknowledge that it's Ben Fountain's last day at council today. Ben, I know you've been at council for 4 years off to the private sector. I just wanted to acknowledge from my own personal perspective the work that you've done around our climate planning and our flood resilience planning as well. That's work I've really appreciated. And recently we've had a lot of very positive comments, in particular from the Pātahanui community, about the workshop that you ran recently. So thank you very much for that work, and good luck and all the best going into the future. So with that, we are about to move now into public excluded. So I will move that we go into public excluded. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Ford, thank you very much. All those in favour, please say aye. Opposed?